Namaskar, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to Global Scan, all the major international news and developments of the week in the next half an hour. Race for Democratic presidential candidate in the United States is gaining momentum. We will talk about how did the New Hampshire primary play out. China and the world continue to struggle against the spread of COVID-19. Well, that's the official name of novel coronavirus now. A deadly shootout in Thailand that claimed several lives. All that and more. Let's begin with the headlines. Bernie Sanders narrowly wins New Hampshire's Democratic presidential primary, followed by Pete Buttigieg, former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Former Vice President Biden limps to his second consecutive poor finish. Death toll continues to rise due to coronavirus. World Health Organization officially names novel coronavirus as COVID-19. Also launches Global Research and Innovation Forum to mobilize international action. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says bloc's next budget should include climate and digital economy as top priorities. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson gave green signal for a high-speed rail project connecting London to the northern England. Anti-terrorism court in Pakistan sentences Mumbai attack mastermind and Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed to 11 years jail in 2 terror financing cases. And in the Oscars, Korean film Parasite becomes the first non-English film to bag the Best Picture award, creates history. Joaquin Phoenix bags Best Actor award for his stellar performance in Joker. Brad Pitt gets Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Let's now begin with news from Americas. The race for Democratic presidential candidate is gaining momentum. Senator Bernie Sanders won the New Hampshire Democratic primary contest. The left-wing senator scored a close victory over the centrist former mayor Pete Buttigieg. The contest had more bad news for former Vice President Joe Biden. The erstwhile frontrunner finished at the 5th position. Sanders declared the night as the beginning of the end of Donald Trump. On the other side, President Trump is almost certain to win Republican nomination for the near record support that he now enjoys in the party.
Bernie Sanders narrowly won New Hampshire's Democratic presidential primary on February 11th, solidifying his frontrunner status in the nominating race and dealing a setback to moderate rival Joe Biden, who appeared likely to finish a disappointing 5th. Sanders, a progressive senator from neighboring Vermont, fended off attacks from rivals who warned his far-left views would lead the party to defeat in the November 3rd election against Republican President Donald Trump.
The reason that we won tonight in New Hampshire, we won last week in Iowa, is because of the hard work of so many volunteers. And let me say tonight that this victory here is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. With victories behind us, popular vote in Iowa and the victory here tonight, we're going to Nevada, we're going to South Carolina, we're going to win those states as well. And tonight I want to take the opportunity to express my appreciation and respect for all of the Democratic candidates we ran against. Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden. And what I can tell you with absolute certainty, and I know I speak for every one of the Democratic candidates, is that no matter who wins, and we certainly hope it's going to be us, we are going to unite together and defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country.
Moderate Pete Buttigieg, the 38-year-old former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, was in the second place after edging out Sanders in last week's chaotic and disputed first nominating contest in Iowa. Both campaigns have asked for a partial recanvass of the Iowa results. He congratulated his rivals.
I want to congratulate my competitors and their supporters on their campaigns here in New Hampshire. I admired Senator Sanders when I was a high school student. I respect him greatly to this day, and I congratulate him on his strong showing tonight. And I want to congratulate Senator Klobuchar, Senator Warren, Vice President Biden, and all of our Democratic candidates and supporters. And I know that we all share the spirit that we heard from some of our volunteers at a poll site earlier today who welcomed a competing candidate with chants of vote blue no matter who.
It was also a good night for Senator Amy Klobuchar, who rode a wave of momentum from a strong debate on Friday into an apparent third-place finish. Biden, the former vice president who was once the frontrunner in the Democratic race, limped to his second consecutive poor finish after placing fourth in Iowa. He's certain to face growing questions about his campaign's viability and his ability to consolidate moderate support against a surging Buttigieg and Klobuchar.
Tonight, though, we just heard from the first two of 50 states. Two of them. Not all the nation, not half the nation, not a quarter of the nation, not 10%, two. Now where I come from, that's the opening bell, not the closing bell. And the fight to end Donald Trump's presidency is just beginning.
US President Donald Trump also took to Twitter to mock the Democratic candidates vying in the New Hampshire primary to challenge him in the 2020 presidential race. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
The US Senate has passed an Iran war pass resolution on Thursday to limit United States President Donald Trump's ability to wage war against Iran. The legislation aims to rein in his ability to use military action against Iran without the congressional approval. 8 of Trump's fellow Republicans joined the Democrats to pass the war pass resolution by 55 to 45 votes. The measure would require Trump to remove U.S. troops engaged in hostilities against Iran unless Congress declares war or passes a specific authorization for the use of military force. Opponents said the resolution's passage would send the wrong message to Tehran. Moving on, Venezuela's opposition leader Juan Guaido returned to Venezuela on February 11th after an international tour and said the pressure against the government of President Nicolas Maduro will increase because the country bleeds out and must be saved. Guaido entered Venezuela while the main airport was allowed to back by official despite a travel ban imposed by Maduro's government. Guaido, who is recognized by more than 50 countries as Venezuela's legitimate president, hopes to revive the inertia of 2019 when he led a groundswell of protests against Maduro over human rights violations and a collapsed economy. Let's now look at news coming in from Asia. Coronavirus got a new official name this week. It will be called COVID-19. Well, nomenclature aside, China and the world continue to grapple with the spread of the new virus. As on Friday, the WHO data shows around 47,000 confirmed cases around the world, most of them in China. Hundreds of frontline health experts in China, in fact, are facing greater risk of getting infected. Casualties in China has crossed the 1,300 mark. 3 deaths have been recorded outside of mainland China as well. 1 in Hong Kong, 1 in Philippines, and the most recent one in Japan.
Death toll continues to rise due to coronavirus. The World Health Organization officially named the novel coronavirus pneumonia as COVID-19 on Tuesday in Geneva, Switzerland. The name is taken from the word corona, virus and disease, with 2019 representing the year that it emerged.
We had to find a name that did not refer to a geographical location, an animal, an individual or group of people, and which is also pronounceable and related to the disease. Having a name matters to prevent the use of other names that can be inaccurate or stigmatizing.
WHO also launched a global research and innovation forum to mobilize international action in response to the novel coronavirus outbreak. The forum gathered roughly 400 participants both live and online, including leading scientists from virus-related disciplines around the world, representatives of countries with confirmed novel coronavirus cases, and those of public health agencies, ethics experts with related expertise, and representatives of major research donors.
Both on the epidemiology of the disease, but also on some of the research that's already being done. in China. So that was very, very useful to have right at the beginning, to know about to what's happening. And even when we look at the WHO clinical trial platform, we can see already there are 84 clinical studies that are registered there, all led by Chinese scientists, but there are many other research studies going on. So they're really, there's wonderful infrastructure and capacity in China to do this. And so we need to learn from them.
The United States Center for Disease Control said the novel coronavirus was more transmissible than the SARS virus, as the World Health Organization branded coronavirus public enemy number 1.
This outbreak is spreading much more quickly than SARS did. We could see from the pace by which the virus was imported into many other countries, more than 24 right now, that this virus seems to be more transmissible than SARS. On the other hand, the current information suggests this virus overall may be less severe than SARS. Among the confirmed or cases of SARS, it was about 1 in 10 that resulted in death. The current estimate from China of the cases they're aware of is that it's about 2% result in death. But that number really needs to be put in qualifications, because the level of illness is such that they haven't really broadened the ability to track the milder illness, the illness that might not need to present to care.
Meanwhile, more and more patients of the new coronavirus pneumonia are recovering and getting discharged from hospitals across China. The newly cured patients released from hospital on Tuesday outnumber the deaths with 260 versus 66. China's Ministry of Transport also initiated a Class 2 emergency response to guard against any epidemic outbreak during the Spring Festival travel rush. All major Chinese delivery enterprises have restored normal operations since Monday, with orders of fresh produce increasing dramatically. Influenced by the novel coronavirus disease, COVID-19, many delivery orders have been delayed due to the Spring Festival. But now the delivery pressure will be relieved as more and more Chinese delivery enterprises have been back in normal operation. A team of UK scientists from Imperial College London have begun animal testing of a vaccine for the new coronavirus epidemic. They have come up with the candidate vaccine in just 14 days.
To make the biologically safe material, you need very specific types of factories, and you need to develop those processes once we know which vaccine is going to work. And so there is a delay time in that process, but also we need to make sure it's safe and do the test properly before. Rushing it through and getting an unsafe vaccine would be far worse than doing it as quickly as we are able to and getting a safe, effective vaccine.
But despite all efforts, analysts say the novel coronavirus pneumonia epidemic is expected to reach its peak in mid to late February in the southern part of China, with no more peaks following in sight. Respiratory scientist Zhong Nashen, the head of the national team of experts for NCP prevention and control and an academician of the Chinese Academy of Engineering, confirmed that the number of new confirmed cases have been gradually decreasing. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi on Friday. Both sides held delegation-level talks and inked a number of agreements, taking the close ties between the two countries forward. Focus was on industrial and audio-video co-production. Earlier, Portuguese President was accorded a grand ceremonial welcome at Rashtrapati Bhavan. He called India a superpower and said that India and Portugal can work for peace and sustainable development in the world. At the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Donald Trump, accompanied by First Lady Melania Trump, will pay a state visit to India on 24th-25th February 2020. This will be President's first visit to India. During the visit, President Trump and the First Lady will attend official engagements in New Delhi and Ahmedabad in Gujarat, and also interact with wide cross-section of Indian society. The Ministry of External Affairs said that global strategic partnership between India and the US is based on trust and shared values. The relationship has further evolved under leadership of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, with significant progress in all areas, including trade, defense, counter-terrorism, energy, coordination on regional and global issues, as well as people-to-people ties. The Emir said the visit will provide an opportunity for the two leaders to review progress in bilateral and further strengthen our strategic partnership. US President Donald Trump said that he is looking forward to his first visit to India later this month, indicated that the two countries may sign a trade deal as well.
I just spoke with Prime Minister Modi, and it's going to be very, I don't know who's going, but he said we will have millions and millions of people. My only problem is, so last night we probably had 40 or 50,000 people, far more than anyone else, but when we have 50,000 people nowadays, fellas, I'm not going to feel so good, because he thinks we'll have 5 to 7 million people just from the airport to the new stadium. And you know, it's the largest stadium in the world. He's building it now. It's almost complete, and it's the largest in the world. And he's a friend of mine. He's a great gentleman, and I look forward to going to India. So we'll be going at the end of the month.
Moving on, Mumbai attack mastermind and Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed was sentenced to 11 years in jail by an anti-terrorism court in Pakistan in 2 terror financing cases. Saeed, a UN-designated terrorist whom the United States has placed a US $10 million bounty, was arrested on July 17th in terror financing cases. Last year, he is lodged at Lahore's Court Al-Aqba jail in high security. Saeed was sentenced in 2 terror financing cases. A Thai soldier killed at least 30 people and wounded several others in an overnight shooting rampage at Terminal 21 shopping center in Thai city of Nakhon Ratchasima before security forces shot him down. Thai forces identified the rogue soldier as 32-year-old Jakra Pantoma. The soldier drove to a mall in a stolen Humvee and was armed with an assault weapon and ammunition stolen from the army base's arsenal, the forces informed. Let's now look at news coming in from Europe. Well, talks are on to determine the 7-year budget of the European Union. The budget impacts all aspects of the economy of the member states, particularly focus on agriculture, infrastructure, education. Those are the key focus areas. The Commission President says the budget must reflect the old and new priorities, with particular emphasis on climate and digitization. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson gave a thumbs up for a high-speed rail project connecting London to northern England to catch up with the superior rail infrastructure of the European counterparts.
European Commission President said that the bloc's next budget should include climate and digital economy as the top priorities. The leaders of the 27 member states will meet on 20th February to agree on a 7-year budget for the Union.
What is important, we have to find the right balance between old priorities and new priorities. Because if you look at the negotiations, while there are many, many member states that strongly defend cohesion policies, and rightly so, and there are many member states that strongly defend the common agricultural policies, and rightly so. But I also expect to see the same dedication when it comes to defending our new priorities.
The current budget that began in 2014 expires in December, and a new one has to be agreed because the farmers across the bloc depend heavily on its support, as do governments for infrastructure projects, education and research. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson gave the green signal for a high-speed rail project connecting London to northern England on 11th February, saying he would take a firmer grip on a project that is behind schedule and running billions of pounds over budget. Known as HS2, the high-speed line will slash journey times and add capacity to Britain's crowded network, allowing the UK to catch up with the countries like France and Spain that have extensive high-speed rail.
The Cabinet has given high-speed rail the green signal. We are going to get this done. And to ensure that we do so without further blowouts on either cost or schedule, we are today taking decisive action to restore discipline to the programme. I will be appointing a minister whose full-time job will be to oversee the project. A new ministerial oversight group will be tasked with taking strategic decisions about it. There will be changes to the way HS2 is managed. We will, in line with Mr. Okavi's recommendations, be interrogating the current costs to identify where savings can be made in phase 1 without the costs and delays that would be associated with a detailed redesign. and so that the company can focus solely on getting phases 1 and 2A built on something approaching time and budget, I will be creating new delivery arrangements for both the grossly behind schedule Euston terminus and phase 2B of the wider project. But before those designs are finalised and legislation introduced, we will also present an integrated plan for rail in the north.
HS2 will connect London to Birmingham in central England, known as Phase 1, before splitting into 2 and going to Manchester in the west and Leeds to the east. The government has already spent £7.4 billion on HS2 without laying down any tracks. Physical work has started, however, with buildings demolished, land cleared and utilities rerouted. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Let's now shift focus to Africa. The African Union has agreed to not start funding security operations from a new fund as it has not received enough money. The theme of this year's African Union Summit was silencing the guns. But at the end of the event in Addis Ababa, it emerged that the new fund to do just that had not received enough money. Amid the rising violence in Sahel region, the AU had hoped to start tapping the fund this year for peacekeeping missions, mediation and conflict prevention. Instead, it agreed not to start financing security operations from the fund until 2023 because it's received less than half of the hoped for $400 million. The funding failure is a setback to security hopes after an increase in attacks by Islamist militants across the sprawling Sahel. Hundreds and thousands have been forced to flee from their homes. South Africa's president commemorated 30 years since Nelson Mandela's release from Victor Verster prison on February 11th. Cyril Ramaphosa addressed a large crowd gathered at the Cape Town City Hall, where Mandela made his first speech after being imprisoned for nearly 3 decades. Standing on the exact spot where he held Mandela's microphone for his first speech after being released in 1990, Ramaphosa said the country could be proud of the achievements of Mandela and his generation helped install. Mandela retired from politics in the year 1999 and handed over power to a new generation of leaders. His decision to step down voluntarily after one 5-year term as president was seen as an example to other African leaders who stubbornly clung to power. Mandela remained a global advocate for peace and social justice and took on the role of elder statesman until his death in December 2013. Some more international updates in Speed News.
Ireland's politics took a turn as Democratic Party Sinn Féin emerged as the second largest parliamentary party after winning the popular vote in the elections. Sinn Féin took 37 of the 160 seats, while centre-right party Fianna Fáil was only one ahead on 38. Prime Minister Leo Varadkar's Fine Gael party took 35, a result likely to mean his departure from office. In Azerbaijan, President Ilham Aliyev's ruling party celebrated a win in parliamentary polls, but the opposition claimed the election was totally falsified. According to preliminary results, the ruling New Azerbaijan Party won 69 seats in the National Assembly. However, independent candidates received 41 seats. Voters in Switzerland strongly backed a new law against homophobia in a referendum to protect the LGBT community from discrimination. Preliminary figures showed 60.5% voted in favor of widening existing laws against discrimination of incitement to hatred on ethnic or religious grounds. Iran successfully launched a satellite this week but failed to put it into orbit. The attempted launch of the Zafar comes days before the 41st anniversary of the Islamic Revolution and crucial parliamentary elections in Iran. Australia's highest court ruled 2 indigenous men cannot be deported even though they were born overseas and never applied for citizenship, in a landmark ruling for the country's first inhabitants. Daniel Love and Brendan Toms were born overseas with at least one of their parents an indigenous Australian citizen. Both men had been living in Australia with permanent residency visas but had never applied to become citizens. In Germany, Storm Sabine hit the North Sea coast, disrupting normal life as 150 flights and train services were cancelled due to strong winds. In another incident, Storm Ciara hit western coast of Britain and Ireland. More than 30,000 homes were left without power, largely in eastern England. Meanwhile, in Ireland, over 14,000 homes and businesses were without power. The number of chin-strap penguins in some colonies in western Antarctica has fallen by as much as 77% since they were last surveyed in the 1970s, say scientists studying the impact of climate change on the remote region. The chin-strap penguin, named after the narrow black band under its head, inhabits the islands and shores of the southern Pacific and Antarctic Oceans. It feeds mainly on krill. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
And now time for showbiz. What's bigger than the Oscars? 92nd edition of Oscars saw many firsts. A non-English movie won the Best Picture award for the first time. More in this report.
And the Oscar goes to Parasite.
A piece of history was scripted at Oscars 2020 when South Korean movie Parasite, a social satire about wealth gap, swept away the Best Picture honor from all the big-budget Hollywood movies, including 1917. Parasite became the very first foreign language film to win the top honor ever. It also became the Best International Feature Film of the Year and won the top prize for Best Original Screenplay. Parasite was also premiered at the 50th edition of the International Film Festival of India in November last year. Parasite's director Bong Joon-ho won the Best Director prize at the ceremony. The 92nd edition of the cinema's biggest honor, the Oscars, kicked off in Los Angeles with Joaquin Phoenix bagging the Best Actor trophy for his portrayal of terrifying yet isolated Joker. Phoenix became the second actor to win an Oscar for playing the DC comic book villain. Joker also won Oscar for Best Original Music Score. Meanwhile, Renée Zellweger's portrayal of actor-singer Judy Garland in her twilight years helped her win the Best Actress trophy. It was the second Oscar for Zellweger, who previously won a Best Supporting Actress award 15 years ago. Oscars 2020 also honored legendary superstar Brad Pitt with the Best Supporting Actor prize for his performance as a charming stuntman in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, while Laura Dern won her first Oscar for her portrayal of a ruthless divorce lawyer in Marriage Story.
And the Oscar goes to...
The Heavyweight 1917, a British war epic film directed, co-written and produced by Sam Mendes, claimed its Oscar for Best Visual Effects and Cinematography, while Ford vs. Ferrari won the award for the Best Film Editing. Pixar's animated Toy Story 4 took home the Best Animated Feature trophy at the Oscars. Hair Love, which follows the story of a man who has to do his daughter's hair for the first time, won the Oscar for the Best Animated Short Film. Oscars 2020 also honored Marshall Curry's The Neighbor's Window with the Best Short Live Action Film Award. Meanwhile, writer-director Taika Waititi claimed his very first Oscar for adapted screenplay in Jojo Rabbit. Other winners included Netflix's American Factory for documentary feature and Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone for the Best Documentary Short Feature. Jacqueline Duran won the Oscar for the Best Costume Design in period drama Little Women, while Bombshell won an Oscar for the Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
The annual Carnival of Venice opened and delighted revelers and dancers and artists. Floating structures paraded down the Rio de Canaraggio Canal. The vivid display of colorful lights and nighttime spectacles sent off the 2020 edition of one of the world's oldest carnivals to a romantic start. During the 2 weeks of the carnival, the city fills with thousands of tourists from across Italy and the world. Enjoy the beauty of Venice. See you next week. Goodbye for now.